as president for the 2024-28 term and is known for having a strong knowledge of the legislature and its processes as a result of being elected and serving in both chambers. Of course, he presides over the 39-member body and directs policy for members and employees. He is actually fifth in line of succession to be governor, behind Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, Attorney General, and the Treasurer. I don't know if he wanted y'all to know that or not, but he is here today to share with us the goings-on of the legislature, share us a little bit about, obviously, their focus, and to answer our questions. So, without further ado, President Henry, thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much for having me. We'll just start off, just kind of get a brief little recap of what's going on in Baton Rouge, and then I prefer to take questions over me just standing up here talking. I find it to be more valuable for everyone. Obviously, we had this governor is very enthusiastic about how he wants to change Louisiana. He moves fast, talks even faster. He and I have a very good relationship because we can have these live, as I call them, lively discussions, but at the end of the day, we still have the same goal of making Louisiana a better place. Obviously, the crime session was probably the biggest hurdle that we went through so far. I think we got a lot of great things done. We still have a lot of work to do with that, specifically on the financing side of it. Which is why we have a bill. Julie Emerson has a revenue stabilization, where I think we're going to dip into that fund to be able to cover some of the costs of the juvenile justice reform bills, give the Attorney General some one-time money to help with the prosecution of cases in New Orleans, and then we'll move that group to New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Shreveport, all the high crime areas we're going to work through. That was a difficult session, but it was very much needed, not only for Louisiana, not only for New Orleans and Shreveport, the areas that we have the issues with, Metairie, but also for the public relations of Louisiana. We needed people outside of Louisiana to know that we accept that we have a crime problem and that we're taking the steps necessary to fix it. They won't be immediate. There's not one big 3 bills that we can pass and make crime go away, but we needed the public outside of Louisiana and also internationally to know that we're going to focus on crime and cleaning up the streets. Not only in New Orleans, we have other issues, other crime areas throughout the state, but as we all know, everyone, more people know New Orleans than know Louisiana. So that's a priority the governor had, and we're working towards that now. As for this legislative session, some hot topics that you will continue to hear about. Constitutional Convention is one. ESAs, Education Savings Accounts, that's going to be another one. Those are two very national issues. Specifically, the ESA is. I actually had a call, which is my first time doing it. It was very informative. There's a group of presidents of the Senate from around the country, and we had a call on Thursday, and it actually, the topic was ESAs. So you got to hear from, I guess there was about 15 or 20 of us on the call, and everyone could kind of go through, and the calls, as amazing as it was, the call lasted about an hour. So imagine having that many presidents of the Senate on a call, and it only lasting an hour. And the moderator was really good, and so were the folks on the call. But we didn't do hey, where are you from? What's your favorite color? Where'd you go to high school? We didn't do any of that. It was straight to business on ESAs, good, bad, and ugly in your area. So it was very informative to me to see how other presidents of the Senate view ESAs and how they're received in their area. And across the board, there is a general agreement that it has the potential to do some great things for your area. The speed at which you implement them is very important. Controlling the cost was a general theme across every state that we discussed, was how do you control the cost of these, which I think we can learn from, because we're not the first one to do it and we won't be the last one to do it. We'll be able to learn from other states the best way to control the cost on it and have it implemented in a way that makes sense for everyone. That process will take place. I know Senator Edmonds has a bill in Finance Committee today. We have several pages of amendments on that bill to adjust the bill moving forward. I know Representative Emerson's bill, I believe, got out of appropriations last week. So that should be on the House floor, I would imagine, one day towards the end of this week. A lot of unknowns about that process, but I do think at the end of the day, at a minimum, we will pass. It's about a $1.8 million appropriation to begin the process, right? To set up what ESAs would look like in Louisiana, to get the rules and regulations promulgated through Bessie, to where next year when we come back and we decide if we're going to spend money and how much, we know exactly what we're doing when we started. The bill is a little aggressive in putting everything together before we figure out whether we actually want to do it. Right? And we want to work out the details before we agree on how much money, the number of students, and are we going to take students that are in failing schools? Are we going to take students that are currently in the voucher program? What schools can they go to? Can a child in a failing school go to an A school? Can a kid that's in an A public school, who just doesn't like the school, can they move to a different school? So we have to work out all of these things, but before we can get to that stage, we need a good foundation of what the program is going to look like. And I think that's the goal for this step moving forward. I met with the governor on it on Wednesday, and he agreed that you got to have a good foundation if you want the program to be successful long term. We've learned that some states, I believe Arizona might have, there's Arizona, a couple of them that the costs have just exceeded expectations of literally everything, right? They're in the $300, $400, $500 million range. And once you start these programs, it's very hard to pull them back. So we want to make sure that we don't give someone false hope and then have to take that back. We want to implement them in a very methodical way. The other big issue is the Constitutional Convention. That is a much more livelier discussion with members. We don't have a group of members who are a no that we're trying to convince to be yeses. We have a group of members, at least on the Senate side, who really don't understand how it would work, trying to get to a yes. And that's where we're going to continue to have meetings with the governor's team and, amongst ourselves of how we would like to set this up. It's obviously a daunting task, even if you're going to take, even if you can take items from the Constitution and just move them out of the Constitution and move them into statute. It seems simple until you look at all the items that you could possibly use, which would be the entire Constitution, right? What everyone has to remember, which I'm sure you all do, is that when you go to the Constitutional Convention, it's not limited, it's the entire Constitution that's available in front of you. So as we go through the process, members are trying to figure out what that would look like and whether they feel comfortable with that two-thirds vote, the initial two-thirds vote to get into a Constitutional Convention. To pass Representative Beauier's bill, you need two-thirds. After that, then you just need a majority of the delegates. The delegation process is another issue another thing we're trying to work through. There's a thought that you can combine all the members into one body and have 144 delegates. I know that Representative Beauier's bill has an additional, I believe, 27 outside groups, outside individuals that would be, I'm sure, appointed by the governor to be a part of that as well. What I've learned in my limited 16 years in Baton Rouge is that the more people that you're trying to help make a decision, the longer that decision will take place. Much, much longer. And we have until June 3rd. Like that's, on the Senate side, June 3rd is our cutoff date. So the more people you add, the longer the process is going to take. And at the end of the day, you're trying to put something together that you can bring to the voters and have them approve. Right? That's the next step in this. We're going to come up with what we would think, if we're able to do this, what the new Constitution should look like, and the voters will vote in November whether they like it or not. I don't know whether we need any more people than the ones that were already elected by their constituents back home, right? House could vote, Senate could vote, and we could move forward like that. We're not really there yet on the 27 additional folks. Nothing against the 27, but that would be it would make it a little bit more time-consuming for a process that's already going to be very time-consuming. And we've got to have public hearings on this, right? If you want to adjust anything in the tax code, you need to make sure that that runs through Revenue and Fiscal Affairs and Ways and Means on both sides. So you have to have public hearings to allow the general public to understand what you're doing, and so members can make that final decision. Remember, you're only going to vote one time, right? You're not going to vote on it like you're going to vote up or down one time. So if you have an issue related to taxing, it may go to Ways and Means or Revenue and Fiscal Affairs for the purpose of a discussion. You're not going to vote to take it in or out at that moment. It's allow for the public to have a discussion. Later on down the road, when it gets to the Senate floor, you'll be able to adjust it accordingly if you choose to. But it's a very daunting task, which, as I've said before, I don't know what one of you all wrote about. It's possible. We just have to make sure it's practical. And you don't want to start something and have it fail. So we want to make sure we have a really clear blueprint of what we're going to do moving forward. And those are really, of course, those are some significant issues. The budget will always be a significant issue. About a $44 billion budget. Again, an enormous amount of that, well over half, is federal funds. So there is a method, there is a logic to a Constitutional Convention when you think about the amount of money that's tied up in the state constitution. We have 48 constitutionally dedicated funds that currently have $9.1 billion in them. A lot of money. So what I've asked staff to do right now is to do me a favor and find out how much money we're putting in and when's the last time we've ever taken any money out. Think about it. You're filling up your savings account, which is a great thing to do. But do you fill up your savings account to cut funding to programs that everyone believes are essential? That's when you start trying to come up with that balance of how much more money do we need in our savings account before we can start spending money on roads and bridges. We always talk about roads and bridges as if we have no money for roads and bridges. We have billions of dollars tied up in the Constitution for roads and bridges. I just need to know that we're actually spending the money. So I've asked, when's the last time anyone's taken any money out to do this? It sounds simple, and some of you are looking at me like perplexed that you didn't realize that we had $9.1 billion tied up in 48 different constitutionally dedicated funds. We can get to those funds with a 2/3 vote, which is what Representative Emerson's bill is going to do, is allow us to reach into the Revenue Stabilization Fund to up to $400 million to take some money out to deal with, probably to do juvenile justice issues and some crime issues, but you could also do other things as well if the legislature saw fit. I'm trying to think of the other issues, big topic issues. The capital outlay process, obviously that's the construction part, is in dire straits right now. We are well over capacity on priority 5 by the tune of billions of dollars. And if I remember correctly, we were only able to fund about 40% of the projects in priority 1. The last capital outlay bill last session, the last day that it was passed, had some significant issues with it. It was a mistake to pass it in the form that we did. We made a mistake, and now we have to fix it. We're also going to make sure we don't make that mistake again, I can assure you, by not rushing the bills through at the last minute on either side, to make sure everybody understands what's in the bills and the effects they'll have both short-term and long-term. I could talk all day if you'd like, or y'all can throw some questions at me. There's no way you all don't have questions. Come on. He got behind. Ladies first, good.
I have a question. I'm Latonya Scott with AARP Louisiana, and we have about 437,000 members in the state, many of which are retirees. They're living on fixed incomes, and they're receiving Medicaid benefits. What will the impact of the Constitutional Convention have on older adults who rely on these pensions and health insurance, HCBS services, and alternatives to nursing homes?
Well, I mean, the effect could be everything and nothing, right? If we decide not to take any of those things out of the Constitution, that'd be perfectly fine. By the fact that you represent the AARP and that the significant number of people in the old Jefferson part of my area are members of the AARP, I would imagine they're going to be okay at the end of the day. Because the items that really the administration wants to focus on are the items dealing with the financial side of the ledger, of the Constitution. Anything dealing with anything dealing with the elderly or the homestead exemption or kind of the hot button issues. Remember, the voters have to vote on this. So it's not like we can just do this in a vacuum and hope it passes. The last thing I know that I want, nor does any of my colleagues in the Senate want, are all the people in their district that deal with the AARP. That doesn't just mean the grandmothers and grandfathers. It means their kids and their grandkids, right? That's not just one person usually. That's a group. So I think from that perspective, we have to be very strategic in the areas that we decide to have a little bit less protection since they're not in the Constitution. Do I see issues dealing with the AARP as falling into that category? I do not. The list that I've seen really deal more on the financial side, the constitutionally dedicated funds, statutorily, to move that statutory and some of the exemptions that are in the books as well. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
President Henry, what do you think of the measures that we introduced at the last day of filing bills with regard to what the advocate is on record as saying we've got Louisiana's public records laws? What are your thoughts on it, and what are your thoughts on the potential passage of any one of those 3 measures?
That's to see if I can get this word right. That is the deliberative process bill? Is that?
It's Heather Cloud. Well, there are 3 bills. Heather Cloud's, Blake Miguez, and on the House side, Jay Morris. The 3 collectively, at least according to an article by the advocate, the headline said it would, quote, gut Louisiana's public records laws.
Nope.
That's their words, not mine.
So there was, I don't know, the Jay Morris, the senator, or Jay Morris? The Senator Jay Moore. Okay. Yeah, no. When you, I think one Jay Morris is good. That's my. No, he's a good legislator. We need him. The only one that I'm familiar with is the one dealing with deliberative process, simply because I remember that term under Jindal's years. It's the same idea, I believe, that he tried to put forth as well. I haven't read it to the point where I can tell you whether I'm for it or against it. I knew that under the Jindal years, I know we had some issues with that because, you're trying to because I believe these bills cover everyone, correct? From dog catcher to governor, right? And is that from? And I'm nothing against dog catchers, from dog catchers all the way through. And I think sometimes it's a very difficult process for members to understand why you need so much information to be held in secret, right? We've done this in the past, where as it relates to economic development, when someone's putting in a proposal, that some of that information needs to be proprietary based on the information that they're giving us of why they should qualify for certain tax credits, business plans, things like that. There's certain narrow aspects of it. On this bill, if it's as broad as it is, I think I'll probably have to have a couple conversations with Senator Cloud and Senator Morris as well to find out what their end goal is. And the first question that you always ask in these situations, at least, is what are we trying to fix? Like, what's broken that we're trying to fix, and are we on par with what other states are doing now, or what we're about to do? Does the deliberative process fall better in line with what other states are doing? I don't know. You all might be able to tell me that. I don't know how we relate with our public records now compared to if the bill passes. But that's kind of the basic benchmark we'd like to do, is make sure that where we fit with other states. And to tell you the truth, we have a committee meeting, we have a delegation meeting this afternoon, and that's one of the topics that we're going to discuss is, hey, there's a bill dealing with deliberative process. I need the members who didn't serve under the Jindal years, and there's not many of us left there, to go back and figure out what that means and see where you are on it to see what we want to do moving forward.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if there is a constitutional convention, whatever instrument comes out of there, does it go back to the House and the Senate, or go straight to the vote?
Well, it all depends on how we do all depends on how we set up the delegates. If the delegates are one unit, meaning one body, where it's 144 of us, you would get 50% of those members, 50% of the delegates would vote for it, then it would go to the voters. You could do bicameral, there's two of us, where you'd need 50% of the House members and 50% of the senators would vote, then it goes to the voters.
But that was my original question. With 104 members and 27 that are in the bill, is the Senate somewhat worried about their vote being diluted? There's only 39 when there's 132 outside.
Well, one of the issues that I brought up with both the governor and senators brought to me is that you could have the entire Senate vote against something, and we could have the entire Senate vote against the Constitution, and it could still get on the ballot. Now, realistically speaking, practically speaking, if the entire Senate votes against something, the odds of it passing at the polls aren't very high, right? I mean, realistically, it's not. So that's not the sole concern. It's more the fact of the process that you would use to do this, right? You could use the committee process now to where you want to have public testimony. You could use the committee process we have set up now, both in the House and the Senate, to allow for that process to work. A little bit easier than if you do one unit of 144 of us trying to get together to do a voice vote at one moment. Because remember, it opens up to the whole Constitution. Right? People can add amendments to what you're trying to do, take things in and out all day long. So it's not just what we want to pass. There might be some things we don't want to pass as well. So we just need again, the process has not been laid out in a manner that gives members comfort yet moving forward with Beauier's bill, or Representative Beaulier, excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
So are you saying, setting aside the process issues, do you feel that most of the members are on board with the concept that they want to do this? It's just a matter of how?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I've been in Baton Rouge long enough. Everybody's for everything until you have to pay for it or vote for it, right? I mean, that's just the general theme, right? Everybody's for it. So in concept, they would like the idea of being able to look at some of the dedications that we have set up. Everybody thinks that's a good idea, especially when you talk about $9.1 billion. The process that you go through to get there has not been laid out by anyone. And I think that's the biggest, right now, that's one of the biggest hurdles that we have. Even if we all agree that we want to do this, which we haven't, we still need a process in place. And what I've asked the groups that are dealing with this, I said, if we were to start tomorrow we're going to have a constitutional convention. Give me an outline. Like, how would it work? What would be the first thing we would do? What's the first motion made, the first bill? Like, how would it actually work? And those are the parts where someone has to get in the weeds and dig through it all. Now, it's an important step. It's an important bill. But there are a lot of important bills in Baton Rouge. And I don't take one bill over the other and say, okay, I'm going to help this bill all the way through the process because I don't think this representative knows what he's doing. Right? I'm not going to do that. Now, Boye and I have been friends. This is my college roommate. Right? Known the guy since college. We lived together in college. So I know him and his wife and his boys and his daughters very well. He's super capable of doing this, but he also has other bills he's working through as well. So if the administration gets on board and some of the groups that are pushing us get on board to kind of lay out the foundation of how the process would work, that would make members a lot more comfortable in the next step of seeing whether they want to actually go forward with it.
My question was actually also along the process. Have you been discussions about who actually is going to write and how are you going to, like, one committee gets one piece of it, one committee gets another?
Well, for those that couldn't hear the question was like, who's going to write it? Like, physically, who's going to write the document? Is it House staff or Senate staff? Are we bringing in another group because our staff is currently working on the 2,000 bills that we're looking at, plus bills that we're dealing with. So we haven't gotten to that. Those are some of the most basic questions that we have to have answered before we can move forward. And again, to the gentleman's point, the idea of it is great. Now tell me the details. Like, give me some specifics of how we're going to do this by June 3rd. Right? Anything after June 3rd is going to be very, I mean, June 3rd is a good day to stop. Let's put it that way. To be successful, June 3rd is a good day for us to be out of the building. Yes, ma'am.
On the $400 million from the Revenue Stabilization Trust Fund, I can't imagine that you need $400 million for juvenile justice facilities. So what else are y'all looking at to spend all of that money?
Well, the reason the $400 million, that dollar amount came up with, is that's the amount of money that's going to be deposited into revenue stabilization this year. And what I've asked the treasurer to do is I said, look, our bond rating is based on about several different factors. One of them is how much money you have in your savings account. How much cash do you have on hand? So I asked the treasurer's office to go find out if we have good bond rating now, with the way it is now. If we didn't put this $400 million in, or if we put it in and then took it out, how would that affect our bond rating? That's where the $400 million came in. Do I think, of course we can spend it. Do I think we'll need it all? No, I don't think we will. But we also don't want to dip into this fund every year. So what we would like to be able to do, at least from my perspective, is if you're going to have to build juvenile justice facilities, find out exactly how much they're going to cost and allocate all of the money for that into a fund to where you don't, every year we're not taking $10 million out for this and $20 million out for this. We don't want to do this every single year. We want to take all the money that we need to build the facilities, to get the foundation going for, I think they want to build 4, I don't know how many juvenile, don't quote me, that juvenile justice facilities, the changes we need to make, the money that we need for NOLA Troop in New Orleans, and the money we want to give to the Attorney General. Take all that out at one time and then allocate it as we need it throughout the next couple of years to get the facilities built and everything back up and running. We don't want to spend, my goal isn't next year to come in and take more money out of revenue stabilization, and then the next year take more to do the same thing. Do one moment where you take the money out, but it's got to be with a plan. And I know Senator Cloud has a bill, say, look, if you're going to build juvenile justice facilities, or however you do, it has to be collective. We don't need every single parish wanting one. We need to have a strategic plan of how many of these things we're going to build. How much are they going to cost? Are they going to be cost savings to the locals once they're built? Go through the whole process.
So are you planning to put it all in a document in legislation to show what it's all going to be spent on?
I think that's the only way, as of now, I think that's the only way members are going to be comfortable with what are you spending the money on, is to tell everybody. I mean, it won't be to the penny of we're going to spend $50 million on juvenile justice. You should be able to get an estimate of what the cost is. But you're also not going to give the money to juvenile justice right away either. You'll put it into a fund where they have to come back and justify, okay, you said it was going to cost $50 million. You don't need all $50 million right now. You might need $10 million this year, $10 million next year, whatever. So we can allocate the money through JLCB over the whole year without having to be in Baton Rouge, and you get much greater scrutiny and oversight over it. Because if you're going to pull money out of a savings account, you want to make sure that every penny is spent properly, or you have issues down the road. Yes, sir.
You say over and over again, not just for you today, but for other people that have discussed this, that this is about finance. Why don't you just do an amendment to pull finances out of the Constitution?
We could do you could do that, where you go into a convention and say, we just want to take all the financial issues out of it. But when you go into a convention, it opens up everything. So you have to be prepared for both. And so there are other issues that members want to go at. There's other things that members want to look at as well that I may not know about. So you talking about doing a limited constitutional convention just on the financial issues. You could take that step, I guess, if we chose to. I just don't. We're not even there yet. Let's put it that way. Like, we're not at a stage where we could say we want to do it based on this. We need the groundwork set for whether we did it on a limited basis, or we open up the whole thing, whatever. How would it work? And no one has explained to members how it would work on day one. And I know that sounds simple, but that's the biggest holdup right now. One of the biggest holdup right now is how would it actually work on day one? And until I can stand up or someone can stand up and tell us that, members aren't opposed to it. They're not for it. They're just waiting for someone to give us some direction, as you would with any bill, right, that we pass in the legislature. What do you do? How much is it going to cost? What's the purpose? That has to be explained to members. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Who are some of the outside groups pushing for a new constitution, and which ones represent the public interest?
Well, can't tell you. I know the Pelican Institute is one group that has been pushing for this. Before any of this even took place, Franklin Foyle, who's now a state senator, has been asking for a constitutional convention for years now. Since I was in the House with him, he's always wanted to do it because he saw the purpose of that. Eddie Risponi has a group that's always obviously Lane Grigsby has a group that is in favor of constitutional convention and is trying to help with some of the research on it. The elected officials, we represent the public interest. Like, that's ours. Like, our job is to represent the public interest, which is why it's taking the process we're going through to do it. Right? A very methodical, very slow, in some cases painfully slow process until we get the information. The difference, I guess, that some folks are having difficulty with is we're not treating this as anything other than a regular bill. Like, it's not my job to go research every bill that's out there to find out why it's good, bad, can we implement it, can't we? That's up to the author and the people who want the bill. They have to come to us, not just me, the entire Senate, entire House, and say why we need to do this. That's what's lacking right now. And it's not for lack of effort by Representative Boyer. It's just, it's a very difficult process, and he's got some help, probably needs some more. But, I mean, I think we can get there, but it's going to be, we have a long way to go and a short way to get there.
You can get where?
To Mr. Bridges' question was get where? We can get to a point where we could start moving the legislation. Now, I can't control what the House does when it gets to the Senate. Moving the legislation, should it get to the Senate, if they can start giving us some specifics of how the process would work.
Do we have another question, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
You had talked about $9 billion.
9.1 billion, yes.
How much of that is the MFP?
I don't think any of it is the MFP. It's the Constitution's dedicated funds, because the funding formula is within. Bessie controls the funding formula, right? It says that you have to have it, but it's not a dollar amount associated. What I was talking about is the actual fund, where you go look at a checking account and there is money sitting in there as you and I speak today, right now, of the 9.1 billion, which is, I'll get whoever wants the list. I mean, it's not like it's a secret. It's a significant. The MFP is an issue with folks because obviously we want to continue funding public education. We're not going to let that just go away through this. And I know that's a point that has concern for folks. But again, if there's 20 things we're trying to do, and back to this young lady's point on the AARP, there's 20 things we're trying to take out of the Constitution, and one of them is the MFP, and we don't believe that the voters will vote for it. Well, the most significant thing to do would be to leave in the Constitution and focus on the other 19. Like, I don't know the last time you all tried to sell something to the entire state to agree on. Like it's not like at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, whether we're going to take care of the elderly folks, we're going to take care of AARP. When you take all those hot button issues out, you still have a significant amount of instruments, amount of topics you could vote on, and you have to sell that to everybody. And that's the next question that members have: is okay, now we've done this. Who is selling it? So we pass it. We pass a month from now, 2 months from now, June 2nd, we pass the Constitutional Convention. We have a new Constitution to go to the voters. Who's selling it? Anybody know? Like, who's going to advertise why they need to do this? Who's run the campaign to push the Constitution, to push this to pass? I don't know. So that's another step in the process that we have to figure out. Now, it's further down the road, right? We want to make sure that we're not there yet, but that's a question members have, is once it passes, who's going to sell it? Because we've all seen constitutional amendments fail that did a lot less, right? A whole bunch less. Fail over and over and over again. This will be pretty significant. So you have to have a significant amount of money behind this to pass it. Well, I think some members would like to know who's going to be responsible for that. I mean, the state's not going to pay for it, right? So you need third-party groups to come out and pay for it. That's inevitable. I mean, I can go on Facebook or Twitter or whatever and send some things. Hey, please consider voting on this. But that's not going to get it across the finish line. We all know that in November. Everybody good?
What makes anybody think that the voters in this state, where there's a lot of skepticism about a lot of things, will pass an overhaul of the Constitution?
Well, the question is what makes us think voters will do it? I think if you explain to them why we're doing it, where if you look at, we're one of the few states that are losing population, right, in the South. We have Mississippi flirting with repealing income tax. We have Texas without income tax. We have Tennessee. Like, repealing income tax, whether we like the idea of doing it or not, is something we must consider. That's $4.5 billion. When you look at the amount of money that's tied up in the Constitution, you've got to at least look at that as a way to offset repealing income tax. Now, when you truly look at what other states do that have repealed income tax, it's not as if they repealed income tax and everything's free now, right? Go look at the cost of certain things have increased, whether it's your simple title insurance for your car, property tax, all the other things that you have to pay for have gone up in other states to offset the cost of repealing income tax. But when you move to a state, you don't have to pay income tax. Okay. Are you really looking at all the other things you have to pay for? You're not, right? You look at the cost of insurance, which is a topic we're working on, I can assure you. Do I have 5 seconds on insurance? Just because, I mean, I could take a little more than 5 seconds. We've moved the property bills out, the 3-year rule. Some of the bills that Louisiana laws that we have that only we have on the property side. We're currently working through the auto side. We have some bills on the House bills over in the Senate that deal with auto. We sent Senate bills to the House that dealt with property insurance. The property insurance bill should ideally be finished within the next 2 weeks, because the commissioner wanted to show a sign to the folks in London that we were serious about changing our rules as it relates to property insurance. But those are moving pretty well. Auto, we're still trying to work through, to be honest with you. And the insurance, the property side, I'm comfortable we should be able to get those out of the House, out of the House in the next 2 weeks to the governor's desk. But that is the one thing. I mean, I don't mean to take it last. It means it's not important. It is the most important thing we're dealing with right now, on every aspect, on the property and the auto. More on the property than the auto, just because that has really jumped ahead of auto. They're both bad, but the property insurance that people are paying are pricing people out of their homes by a significant amount. So we've made some tough votes, and we're hoping that heeds some help for us in the near future. We're good?
Thank you.
Got one more in the back. Yes, sir.
Where would the actual convention be held?
The question is, where would the convention be held? I don't have an answer for that. I mean, you can put 144 of us on the House floor, members and desks, senators and chairs. You can do that. But then if you want to ask questions, you want to vote, you would have to do a voice vote. If you added another 27 people on top of that, then we're kind of getting a little snug. You know what I mean? And we've kind of been together for a while now, so we're looking forward to missing each other pretty soon. So we're going to focus on June 3rd to get out of there, and that's again part of the process of where we would how that would work.
The last convention was held in the Great State Hall, and there was plenty of room, each one had a desk, and so you could have debates right there in front of everybody.
Right. His point was the last time the convention was held, I believe it was held in 1974, but they started planning it in 1972, but they actually debated the policies. This will be less of a policy debate, more of just taking things out of the which in itself is a policy debate, right? Taking something out of the Constitution and put it in statute. But I believe they had about 2 years to plan for that. If one of you all may know, they had 2 years to do it, and they did it in 1974, which is the year I was born. So it's been a while since we've done it, but to your point, it again goes back to it's got to be planned properly. Members have to understand what we're doing, so we don't pass something and then look around and go, okay, who's in charge? You also have to vote who's going to be in charge of it as well. Are you raising your hand because you want to be in charge of it?
No.
Yes, sir.
I just want your opinion. I'm just wondering if possibly when we're talking about rules, constitution. I know that there's favor for being more competitive in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Other states, in connection with, say, royalty and severance tax,
right,
stuff like that. But do you think there's really hard for anybody considering a processing tax? And making sure that.
Well, and that's tied up in the Constitution, correct? And those are one of the things that you would members, and that was done a good bit a while ago, right? And. Right, but again, those are the kind of conversations you want to have of, if we do this, then we're close to repealing income tax, right? That could offset some of the cost of doing that. And that's that's why when we talk about the Constitution Convention, we say we don't want to do it and fail, because there's some great things that can come out of it if it's done in a methodical way. And you hit those points like that's what you were talking about. I mean, I've said this a couple times. It's a general theme of how, my time in Baton Rouge has been, is that everybody wants everything to change, but they don't want anything to be different. Right? That's it, locked in. They want they want things to change, but they don't want everything to be different. And I think now what you have in this governor is he wants things to change, and he's going to make things different. Right? And it's to the benefit. Like, we have to take a chance that it's a benefit. And some of us move faster than others. Some of us slow each other down a little bit, but it's all part of the process. But I mean, that's why he was elected governor the way he was elected. That's why we are where we are in both the House and the Senate, is to change things, make them different, and it's going to take a little bit of a leap of faith. But we feel like we can only go up. Thank you all very much.
Just real quick.